Ya ilai 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 ilai. You guys want to try this with me? Ya ilai 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 ilai
Welcome, everybody. We are very happy that you all came here to our Lunch and Learn at IKAR. And this is part of IKAR's Sephardi Mizrahi Shabbat. It is also a live taping for the podcast that I produce and host called Heritage Words. I see we have some fans here. That's good. So let me just ask the audience, how many of you identify as Sephardi or Mizrahi? Okay, we have a few. So we have a lot to talk about as a group, and there will be some opportunity for audience participation, Q&A at the end. Your voice may be on the podcast if you ask a question. So, Yoni Avi Battat is an amazing musician, and I learned about him through the Jewish world, and I said, we got to bring him to LA, and it really worked out well to have him here as part of Sephardi Mizrahi Shabbat and also the concert that he's going to be doing tomorrow night at Pico Union Project. He brings Arab music into the soundscape of American Jewish life through composition, education, prayer, and performance. His instruments are viola, violin, oud, and vocals. His album, Fragments, is described as an education for the ear and the soul. And it's true, I use quotes from it and excerpts of the songs in my academic presentations to talk about how contemporary American Jews are engaging with their ancestry in fragmented ways. And just the title of the album, Fragments, says it all. And so you can learn about his Iraqi and Ashkenazi ancestry just by listening to his songs, and you will also learn a lot about that through our conversation today. Yoni is the co-founder of Kedma, an ensemble that preserves and reimagines Middle Eastern and North African piyutim, devotional poems. From 2021 to 2022, Yoni toured nationally as an actor and violinist with the Tony Award-winning musical The Band's Visit, including in LA.
Including 4 weeks in LA,
okay,
yeah,
so
at the Dolby Theater, yeah.
I think a lot of us saw you there. Yeah. Okay, so let's start by talking about your ancestors. Tell us, where were your ancestors from, and when did they come to the U.S.?
So my grandparents, my dad's parents, Violet and Avraham, were both born in Iraq. Avraham was born in Basra, and Violet was born in Baghdad. And they came to Israel in 1951, with most of the Iraqi Jews from their community. And my mom's side of the family, it's a few generations further back. So that's part of why I always felt a little bit more connection to my Iraqi heritage, because I knew my grandparents that were born in Iraq, whereas on my mom's side, the grandparents that I knew and loved very much were themselves second generation or even third generation from Poland. They didn't speak Yiddish. They were just kind of New York Jews, not really as steeped in where they came from. And then my dad's family ended up in the States. We don't actually know exactly why. Maybe I'll talk a little bit about this later, but my grandmother was a radio personality on the Arabic language radio station in Israel called Kol Yisrael Ba'aravit, and she had this amazing career. She was a socialite. Every night she had 5 different social plans that she would go one to the other. And my grandfather wanted to come to the States with their 4 kids, and so he ended up coming on his own. And they stayed married, but had this very interesting long-distance relationship where she stayed and had her career in Jerusalem at the radio station, and then he came to the States. We don't totally know why. Yeah.
Wow. And then do you know what languages they spoke when they arrived in the U.S.? Did they still speak Judeo-Arabic at home, the Iraqis and your older ancestors? Do you think they spoke Yiddish when they arrived?
Well, my Ashkenazi ancestors, I'm sure they spoke Yiddish when they arrived, and like so many of us, Yiddish has made its way into our everyday vocabulary, but I never heard my grandparents speak a word of Yiddish other than like the obvious schlep and spiel and that kind of stuff. On my dad's side, they mostly spoke Hebrew, and this is also part of the experience of assimilation they experienced in Israel, of the Arabness of their identity being marginalized, and as the Zionist project was creating its own Israeli identity, the Arabness didn't really fit into that. And so although Judeo-Iraqi Arabic technically was the language that he spoke, although that was the only language that they could communicate with his grandmother in, Najia, it was not a language he would ever be caught dead speaking on the street. And I think as a result, that continued when he came to the States. And in the States, I think they mostly identified outwardly as Israeli, because I think a lot of people didn't know what to do with this Iraqi identity. It was harder to understand. A lot of people didn't even know there were Jews in Iraq, so it was too much to explain. So I think they identified it as Israeli. They spoke Hebrew. They found community with other Israelis. But privately at home, 100%. I hear my dad, even today, speaking Iraqi Judeo-Arabic with his brothers, and laughing hysterically, usually. Yeah.
Oh, so your dad is fluent?
Yeah, my dad is fluent. He also understands, he doesn't read or write Arabic, but he does understand. And so even, when we're traveling or if he encounters Arabs from different places in the Arab world, he can often understand them and speak with them, because Judeo-Arabic is so similar. And yeah, he always, he's not a great teacher of this stuff, but he speaks very beautifully. And I've, especially in my own journey, as I've been trying to connect more with ancestry, and as I've been learning more Arabic myself, I'll always bug him, wait, what's that word you just said? And I'll make him say it again. And he couldn't spell it if I asked him to, but he'll pronounce it as clearly as he can. And I'll be like, oh, this word, it's connected in that way, and he'll be like, I guess so, But he speaks beautifully Iraqi Judeo-Arabic, and I think it's a language that you can tell when he's speaking it. He feels so deeply at home and rooted, grounded, connected, and he just always laughs a lot when he's speaking. It's like a language that holds a lot of humor and character for him.
And did your mom learn any?
We have our few words, but not really, not in any serious way. All of us picked up the words that we needed to, which we'll get into maybe. But my mom learned a lot of the cooking. She learned to make kitchery, for example, and kubba. She makes kubba shifta. But yeah, not much of the language piece. My mom speaks Hebrew, and I think, as I said before, this Israeli piece of their identity was what they kind of wore on their sleeve more publicly. And so Hebrew, if they were going to communicate in some language, that would be the language, if it wasn't English.
Yeah. Okay, so why don't we talk about your heritage words? And sure. Heritage words are words that we've inherited from our ancestors, even though we no longer speak that language. And for many Ashkenazi Jews in America, we have a lot of heritage words from Yiddish, but you have heritage words probably from Yiddish and from Judeo-Iraqi Arabic. So tell us about some of those.
Definitely. So I made a list because I was afraid I was going to forget some. So the most pervasive one that I can even still hear my grandmother's voice saying is Abdalek, which I think you've talked about on the podcast before, possibly. Abdalek combines two words, Abid, which is like the Hebrew word Eved, Abid, like a servant, right? And Ilek, to you. So it's like, I am your slave. I am your servant. I would do anything for you. And this is a term of endearment that my grandmother used to refer to me. And even my dad once, I remember asking him even a few years ago, my grandmother hasn't been with us for quite a long time, but I remember asking my dad, how do you say, oh, that baby is so cute? And his answer was, wee badalu, which is Abdalu, like we're his slave. That's how you say a baby's so cute. So it's not just like I'm your slave, but it's actually like, oh my God, what a cutie. Wee Badalu. That's what he would say. And then when you can imagine everyone kind of standing around and ogling a cute baby, and everyone's saying that. So that's like one of the most kind of near and dear to my heart, because I really do remember my grandmother saying it. But I have plenty more.
Yeah, and so also in one of your songs, you use the word ayuni. Was that another term of endearment you heard from your grandmother?
Totally, yeah. I think I use kind of, those are kind of the more generic Arab terms of endearment. Ayuni, Habibi, Omri, Hayati. These ones I did hear as well. But Abdalek specifically was the one that I think it's, first of all, it's specific to the Jews of Iraq. And second of all, it just felt so sweet because I remember her saying it to me, yeah.
Oh. Well, that word has an ayin in it. And so when your grandmother said it, did she pronounce the ayin or no?
Not really. And I think it's just because it got swallowed. I think she would know it. She would just say Abdalek, Abdalek, Abdalek. You know, she would kind of eat the first syllable a little bit. But yeah, now that I know what it is, Abdalek, it has an ayin at the beginning, like Aved. Yeah.
Okay, well, that actually, we'll talk more about your heritage words, but the ayin brings me to your Hebrew pronunciation. So when you lead services or read Torah, you have to make a decision about how to pronounce the Hebrew. Tell us about that.
Yeah. What can I say? As I've learned Piyut, that's kind of been my entry point to the music of my ancestors. I guess the best way to answer this question would be kind of to talk about my journey into this music.
Let's do it.
Yeah. Which is that I got my first oud when I was 16. And it was bought for me by my grandfather, Avraham, I was playing violin then for 12 years already, since I was 4. And he wanted me to have an entry point into the music of my ancestors. And so he bought me this oud. He took me to a class where I learned about maqam and microtonal music. And that kind of set me off on my journey. I studied Arabic music. I played in an Arabic ensemble in college. I started also to study Arabic. I took a course in college in literary kind of modern standard Arabic. And through that course, I was able to understand more clearly why the Hebrew that my grandfather spoke sounded different than the Hebrew that my dad spoke. For example, my grandfather, when he spoke Hebrew even, every time he said, he differentiated between het and chaf, and he differentiated between ayin and aleph, and he differentiated between well, he also said Saad for Sadiq, and he said Wa sometimes. Maybe Wa was the one that didn't quite make it into the spoken Hebrew. But these are examples of letters that in Hebrew have come to be represented by the same sound, even though they're two different letters. And so through my study of Arabic, I started to understand more clearly why is it that my grandfather spoke differently than my father. And then through that, I started entering into the music of my ancestors. I started learning Piyut. I've started learning melodies from Iraq and Syria and Morocco and Yemen and Tunisia. And my dear teachers, the way they would pronounce the words was very meduyak, very careful to make those exact distinctions. And not just those, also the shva'na and the shva'nach, making sure to pronounce each syllable in an exact way, so that if you were to transcribe it, you can actually know what each letter was. You wouldn't have to guess. And so now it's actually become a really meaningful way of connecting with my ancestors in a very embodied way. Like the feeling of making a het in my throat is really powerful. And every time I remember to do it, I don't always remember to do it because it's not native for me. But every time I do, I feel connected. I feel connected with my ancestors, and I feel connected with the way the language continues.
Beautiful. And so in your musical training, you talked about getting the oud and getting that training in Middle Eastern music. But tell us more broadly about your classical musical training.
Yeah, I started violin when I was 4. My parents, they went to a conference on, it's called the Achievement of Human Potential. It was like a conference on how to raise babies that are smart. And they learned that you can start a kid on violin as early as 3 or 4.
Suzuki,
yeah.
I did it too.
Yeah. Did you end up smart?
I don't know. You tell me.
I'd say so. Yeah, so that was sort of, they did it not because they wanted me to be a musician, but because they wanted me to be smart. And little jokes on them is that I became a musician. Yeah, so that was sort of my start. And even from a young age, though, I was improvising. My mom was very playful in the ways she would practice with me. She would have me play things lying on my back or like hanging upside down on a swing or like, different fun things. And also like trying to figure out the songs that I know and love and how to play them on the violin. So even from a young age, I had this sense of playfulness and curiosity around improvisation. I even started playing in synagogues when I was 12 years old. I started accompanying Friday night services. And I got my first oud when I was 16. In college, I continued playing in the Arabic music ensemble also alongside my classical music education. I decided to go to school for classical music. And by then I had switched to the viola. And one thing led to another. I was in grad school studying classical viola and playing a lot of chamber music and in orchestras but all the while with a deep interest in Jewish music. And I guess one piece of the story I forgot is the klezmer side, which is that when I was around 10 or 12 years old, I started playing in the New Haven Capella, it's called. It's like an intergenerational pickup klezmer band in New Haven, Connecticut, that started playing every December 25th, 30 years ago. They would do a concert for all the Jews. And that was my first time, I think, playing in a band that wasn't like classical music. And so Yiddish music and klezmer actually does have a very native feel to me because that was one of the first types of music I ever learned to play. And I had a few teachers throughout middle school and high school that guided me in that. And so all the while that I was learning to play classical music and studying Arabic music, studying Arabic language, I also had this like deep love for Yiddish and Yiddish music. Studied Yiddish in college, Yiddish language. I did like 4 semesters, I think, of Yiddish. And I also started my own band many years later called 2 Shekel Swing that did, took Yiddish songs and reimagined them in like a jazz swing kind of context, and also wrote my own songs based on Yiddish poetry. And then all the while, I had been trying to develop my skills in Arab music and connect more deeply with Mizrahi Jewish traditions, but all the while, it also felt like I was really a poser. This whole time, I was like, well, I started too late. I didn't grow up with this. Every time I learn new songs, it never feels like I know enough of the repertoire to feel like I'm any sort of expert. And so for a while, I just kind of did it for fun and never really wanted to share it publicly in any serious way. But actually, my Fragments album was an important part of that journey. Recording it and writing it was a process by which I was able to give myself permission to share publicly this music that I'm still learning and that I'm still starting to embody. And though I've learned so much over the last, 15 or 20 years that I've been doing it, it still does feel like I know nothing compared to someone who grew up in this tradition or some of the dear teachers and mentors that I admire in Jerusalem. So that's where I am now, is a work in progress.
Wow, I hadn't really thought about being a native performer of a particular musical style like language, and there is actually cognitive research about language learning, that if you don't learn a language before the critical age of language acquisition, which is around puberty, then you won't be able to sound like a native speaker of that language. And do you think that's the case with music too?
I don't want to give a definitive answer about that. I don't know. I'd like to believe that you can acquire, and just like I know people who did learn languages later in life, and they sound pretty good. Maybe not totally native, but like pretty good. And anyways, I would like to believe that it's possible. And I think, I mean, I have a 14-month-old now, and like I try and play for him Maqa music and like Arabic music and speak to him in different languages, because I really do feel that loss of like, I really wish that I had heard this music sooner when I was younger. I really wish that I was in community that spoke these languages and that played this music. But I do think that there is something about knowing a music natively like you do a language.
Wow. And also, what college did you go to that had both a Middle Eastern music ensemble and 4 semesters of Yiddish?
Any guesses? Brandeis.
Was it a Jewish Middle Eastern music ensemble?
No, it was not.
Okay.
So I was very lucky. I happened to be there at a time where there was a postdoc fellow who, as part of her work at Brandeis, was to start an ensemble. So I was lucky. It doesn't exist anymore. But as a part of that ensemble, actually, she brought in all of these expert musicians that I got to study with. People who I still admire and still am in touch with today, who were really instrumental in my first steps of Arabic music. I couldn't be where I am without those people also.
Okay, tell us about more of your heritage words.
Okay. Well, one that I also remember is chosh. Has anyone told you about chosh before? Okay, good. I wanted to try to find some that you wouldn't know of. So chosh, I don't actually know the origin of it. Maybe you can, if you find out, you'll tell me.
We can do some research.
Yeah, do some research. Chosh means great, and chosh. I think I heard somewhere that maybe it has like a Turkish connection, perhaps. But I remember my grandparents always saying chosh, and it would be actually most specifically. Remember my grandfather saying chosh yon yon, like yon yon being me, like, oh, you're so great, like, thank you for getting me that thing, chosh yon yon. Oh, there you go. So you don't need to do the research now.
He said in Turkish it means pleasant. It's
Persian. In Persian, it means happy.
Yeah.
If you need,
in Persian, it means happy. In Turkish, it means pleasant. Great.
If you have any more research to do, I recommend just doing it in this room.
Yeah,
actually.
we will.
So yeah, chosh is just great, and he would say chosh yon yon, like when I did something nice for him, chosh yon yon. You did a great job. But also, there's another saying that goes with that word, chosh qa'ada, and qa'ada is like a qa'ad in Arabic means to sit, and so qa'ada is like a gathering. So if they're like, we had a great party at our house, or like we had a beautiful Shabbat dinner, my grandfather would say chosh qa'ada, like that was a really great gathering. Yeah.
Nice. Okay, what else do you have?
Okay, this one is actually very kind of specific. It's specific to Arab culture and also like Mizrahi Jewish culture about ayin hara and wanting to keep the evil eye off you. And so when something good would happen to you, my dad would always say skit ukhaliya. Skit is like sheket, like sekat, to be quiet. Ukhaliya, and let it be. Like shut up and let it be. Don't flaunt it. Don't go around anyone. God forbid someone should be jealous of you and what you got, and that they'll put the ayin hara, the evil eye, on you. So that's another one. Skit ukhaliha. That I also remember him saying. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. And I know you use a lot of heritage words in the song "What Would You Say." Would you mind singing an a cappella version of that? I know it's not as good as the instrumental.
So what would you say is a song about trying to connect with ancestry via food and recreating dishes that connect, that remind me of my grandmother, specifically in this case. And so I'll do the chorus, which is the part that basically the song asks the question, if you were here in this kitchen with me as I'm trying to recreate this dish and kind of failing miserably, what would you say? What would you say to me? And I'm imagining that she would say, شوي شوي عبدالك. Take it slow. خذها على كيفك عمري. Take it easy. حس العجين عيوني خليه على ايدك. Touch the dough and trust your hands. حس العجين عيوني خليه على ايدك حبيبي. Yeah, so that's the song. Yeah.
Oh, so beautiful. We can applaud that. Yeah, that's good.
And
then after that, you have that little motif do that also appears elsewhere in your album. I noticed. And tell us about that motif.
Wow, very good. This is called shiftateli. Shiftateli is an Arabic rhythm that comes from like the old Arabic muwashah traditions and like the old rhythmic cycles that it sounds like bum ba bum ba bum 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 ba bum ba bum ba bum. Bum, bum, ba. And it's common for that to be going underneath some sort of an instrumental solo or a vocal improvisation. And so that's what happens in that song. But good ears that you heard that.
Okay. I guess my Suzuki training paid off.
Yeah, that's right.
So then also in that song, you talk about various foods. And to what extent did you have foods from Iraq in your home growing up?
I had a lot, actually. My grandmother and grandfather both cooked a lot, and they had their kind of signature dishes that they would make. Khichdi was really the most common one, which is ironically also an Indian food, and maybe more of an Indian food. But because of the trade routes between Iraq and India, and specifically the Jewish businessmen who were responsible for those trade routes, Khichdi became a staple of the Iraqi Jewish household. And so I actually grew up that it was taught to me that this is a Thursday night food because you're cooking for Friday night and you're messing up the kitchen and dirtying a lot of dishes. Khichdi is a one-pot dish, and so it makes your life easier to cook it on Thursday night. It's like it's similar to majadra. It's like a lentil and rice dish. And besides that, I also had qubba shwandar, which is like so qubba, you might know like kubbi or kibba or that kind of thing was like a dumpling type thing, either fried. But in this case, it was in a soup. And the shwandar version, shwandar in Arabic means beets. And so we actually ate these meat dumplings in a beet soup, which I really loved. And my dad used to make that as well. But all sorts of other things. Arok, which is like a potato and beef patty. That was really good. And my dad also makes malfouf, which is like a baklava type thing. Yeah, tons of stuff like that. And the foods, I mean, for so many of us, food is such a powerful connective force. And the sense memories associated with a particular smell or the taste of a particular dish can be such a powerful way of feeling someone's presence close to you. So that's what the song was about also, is like trying to bring my grandmother's memory closer through the process of trying to make qubba shwandar. Yeah.
Yeah, and it is a way to connect to our ancestors, as is language. And the language and the food are so interconnected. You know, it sounds like all of these foods you called by their Arabic names at home. Is that right? 100%,
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think I also, of course, had a certain process of assimilation growing up. Like, we always called this Israeli salad, you know, the salad that has like small cubes of tomato and cucumber. And I think people have been making that salad for long before Israel existed. But we grew up calling that Israeli salad because that's how people could understand it. Oh, what do you have? It's an Israeli salad. And that's how I understood it too. So there was different ways that we tried to assimilate. We also made bureka salat, but via Israel, and that was like maybe the more palatable, some of the more palatable, easy to understand linguistically and taste-wise.
Did you share those foods with your friends who weren't of Iraqi origin?
Sometimes, yeah. Khichdi was always on Thursday night. So if you were at our house on Thursday night, you were being served khichdi. Yeah, I also have memories of like always having, especially in the summertime, water with mint in it. And like maybe that's not like a dish specifically, but I feel like it's a cultural thing. Maybe it was like always there would be a pitcher of water in the fridge with mint in it. And I remember friends coming over and being like, oh, that's good, that mint water. Yeah. But we called it na water, of course, yeah.
Nice. Okay, so tell us about the album Fragments and how you mix languages on that album.
Yeah, that was partially the goal of the album, is to find a way to represent my own heritage and my own experience, especially through language, musically. And it sort of started out through a deficiency of my own, which is that I don't see myself as being great at writing lyrics. And so I thought, I'll take some poetry that exists. I'll do some research, I'll read some books, I'll find some poems that are beautiful, and I'll set them to music, and I'll put them together in this album. But actually, it ended up being really meaningful to be able to source poetry from different times and different authors. On my album, there's a Sufi poet from the 10th century. There's writing in Arabic, of course, and there's a Yiddish poet from the 1960s. There's Iraqi Jewish poets and novelists from the 20th, from the 50s, 60s, 70s. There's a lot of different influences, and I found not just was it convenient to have words that were written already for me, but also it was meaningful to be able to tap into a different time and place, and to be able to channel their experiences through my music. One of the texts says it was written by Anwar Shaul. Anwar Shaul was an Iraqi Jewish novelist, poet mostly, but journalist as well, who stayed in Iraq much later than most of the Jews. Most of the Jews left in 51 and 52, and he stayed through the 70s. And in 1972, I believe it was, he represented Iraq in the International Conference of Arab Writers. And he wrote this very famous poem that was this ode to Iraq, his homeland, this very special place that, as he says, is like water and air to him. And he says in the poem, "My heart beats with the love of the Arabs, and my mouth proudly speaks their language." Not just their language, by the way, but their dod, this letter, dod, that only exists in the language Arabic. It doesn't exist in any other language. And he says, if my mouth can say the letter dod, I must be from them. Our distant past was shared. We come from the common source. These are lines from the poem. And I thought that was such a powerful image to imagine how the letter and the feeling, as I said before, the feeling of making this sound in your mouth proves something about where you come from and what you share with other people. So that poem was really influential to me, and that's actually what starts the whole album, is this kind of ode to his country. And in the album, I'm reciting it as if it's true for me. The poem starts, "My childhood, the days of my youth drank of the Euphrates, and I grew up on the banks of the Tigris." And those things are obviously not true for me. And it could be that I'll never end up going to Iraq in my lifetime. But the process of imagining what that would have been like to run your fingers through the waters of the Tigris River, or to imagine the smell of earth or fish or whatever have you that are associated with the river, even if I've never been there or even if I don't have a lot of exact details of what that would have been like, to give me a really felt sense of connection with that place. And that became a model for the rest of the album of how we can use the imagination and the senses to be able to connect with a felt and embodied sense of connection, even when we don't always have all the exact details. So the album has Arabic, Yiddish, Hebrew, English, lyrics that I wrote, lyrics that I've taken from a lot of different places, medieval Hebrew poetry. Really, it spans a wide variety of textual influences, but the music shares an Arab framework, that it uses Arabic music and Arabic forms, Arabic instruments to weave those things together. And I actually had a teacher who told me, one of my dear teachers in Jerusalem, I sing on the album in this song, What Would You Say? I sing in English, but in a maqam called Saba, which is very, very, it's a little harsh on the Western ears. I sing, where do I start? How do I learn? You seem so far and so I yearn. And when my teacher Elad heard me sing this, he's like, it's like you're putting Wonder Bread with amba on it or something. It's like this kind of combination of English with a very different flavor musically. But there's something I like about that, and I think there's something that says a lot about that combination. That these things can exist together, and they do exist together in my own identity.
Absolutely. And that's true for physical heirlooms too, that if we have a Kiddush cup or a necklace or a painting of our ancestors, we're using it in the context of our normal American lives and home. And, I think of language as an heirloom as well. The heritage words that we've inherited are words that we have from our ancestors that remind us of our ancestors, even though they're not with us anymore. Do you also think of music in that way?
It's interesting because as much as I wish I did, I didn't actually inherit a lot of music from my grandparents. There's like an Italian song I remember my mom's father singing, that when he would get a haircut, he would like go to the barber, and the barber taught him this Italian song, and they would sing it together. But when I rack my brain trying to think of like what are like the heritage songs that I've inherited, there's not actually that many, and I think that's, especially as a musician, that's what caused me pause to sit back and say, wait a second, what are the songs that I guess it's like kind of a false version of inheriting when you like create it for yourself, or you decide this is something that I'm going to learn from my past. It's still heritage, but it's kind of a fragmented version of heritage. It's a version where you're learning about your own culture and celebrating your own culture almost as an outsider, because it takes so much research and work. And that became also a big theme of my album too.
Yeah, and I think that's pretty common in language too, reclamation. And many of the people that I've interviewed on this podcast have had a similar experience, that they didn't grow up hearing their ancestral language, but then they learned some or a lot of it as adults. And you've really done that with music. And I guess klezmer music too, you think of that as a native thing. Was it played in your home, klezmer music?
Klezmer was never played in my home. I would say one thing that I did hear in my home sometimes, my dad had a cassette tape of the like Mizrahi Slichot music, and I heard a little bit of some of that music growing up on tape. He would always just play it sometime in the weeks leading up to the high holidays. So that's maybe one of the few actual Mizrahi melodies. But what I've learned since then is that, like, for example, Adon haselichot bochen levav. This is like a 20th century melody. It's not even that old, and it certainly doesn't go back to Iraq. It probably was written in Israel, and so this is also a real part of the experience of reclamation work as well. Is to like, oh my gosh, I just heard this melody. This is the melody of my ancestors. It makes me feel so good inside. I have this amazing connection. And then you find out, actually, that's not an Iraqi melody. And you're like, oh, and that's a real experience. And I think, part of me, especially as like a musician and like a musical collector and preserver, it's important to be exact about where melodies come from and to know as much as you can. But also at the same time, there's something beautiful about not knowing and just thinking, you know what? This is giving me that connection that I was looking for. I sometimes tell the story. It's very similar to my. I have this Arabic-English dictionary that was given to me. I was always told it was from my grandmother. My dad gave it to me, and when I started studying Arabic, I was so in love with this object. You talk about physical heirlooms. I would love the smell of it, and opening it, I had these like tattered pages, like everything you imagine when you imagine a really old, beautiful book. And every time I opened it, I was like, oh my God, and my grandmother Violet, she loved Arabic, and she was on the Arabic radio, and that's so amazing, and I'm so proud to be her relative, and blah, blah, blah. And then one day I was like rifling through it, and I looked on the back page, and I saw there was a name written, and it was not her name. And this is exactly the same experience I was talking about with the song Adon Selichot, is like, oh, was all of that experience that I had just kind of fake or like wrong? And I had a moment with it, but what I came to realize is that actually it's perfectly valid. And like the experience of closeness that I felt wasn't it was felt, and the fact that it was felt makes it true, and the fact that it brought her memory closer to me made it good enough. And I guess that's where I am with that experience of languages too.
Yeah. And what about your name? Is that something else you've inherited from your ancestors?
Yeah, my name Yoni is Israeli, so that's that is the influence of the one generation in Israel. But my last name Battat, well, and my middle name Avraham is after my grandfather Avraham. I was actually not the first grandchild. I was the third grandchild on that side, but as my grandfather used to say, I was Bechor shel HaBechor. I was the eldest of the eldest. And so that gave me some sort of status in his mind. And so I was named after him while he was still alive. And Battat, my last name, I feel a deep sense of connection with. And this name can be traced back to the 16th century, actually, in Iraq. And everyone with the last name Battat is someone that I am related to. Batta in Arabic means duck, and Battat is the plural, ducks. And so I'm Yoni Duck. Yoni Ducks is my name. And I think it's because they were duck farmers way back when. And we actually have a book, a Battat book, that traces our lineage from what they call the first generation, and I think it's 16 something, through my dad's generation. My dad's name is listed in the book, and now it's kind of got out of hand. But I feel very blessed to have this name and this connection with other people. And I've been in random places in the world and met Battats, and we were able to figure out how we're related.
So when you introduce yourself, how do you pronounce your last name?
I say Battat, but it's a ta. The second letter, Battat, is a guttural T, which that's also one of the letters I didn't mention earlier when I was talking about Hebrew letters that have two different letters that in our version of modern Hebrew make the same sound. A tet is a guttural ta, and a taf is a neutral T. And so yeah, my name has the guttural ta. Yoni Battat. But I had my same teacher, Elad, who talked about the Wonder Bread with the amba on it. He used to always call me Battat, like that. He would really exaggerate it, because he's also Iraqi, and he really liked that about it.
Okay. Well, so even how you introduce yourself, how you pronounce your name, is similar to the concepts you're talking about on the album. It's fragments, and it's hybrid forms, and I want to just end with a quote from one of your other songs on that album, from the Fragments, the title song. You have this quote: "From the fragments of the stories, I can hear what's unsaid. From the fragments of the voices, I can sing my own song. I'm singing my song." Tell us about that.
I mean, I don't know what. Seems like it speaks for itself. No. It's a journey, and so much of what we're doing is code switching and holding all of these different pieces. Even recently, I recorded a video for Instagram, and I found myself calling my instrument oud, and I was like, wait, that's not oud, it's oud. And I even one day I was going through TSA, and someone said to me, "What instrument is that?" And I was like, oud. And then he said to me in Arabic, oud wala oud, oud or oud. And I was so mortified. I was like, what is my problem? Someone recognized the instrument. Of course they know what an oud is. If I would say an ayin, they could tolerate it. So there's this experience of a lot of code switching and a lot of trying to hold and bringing people along with you and giving them something that they can hold on to and relate to, but also wanting to hold some sort of identity and strength in all of that. So from the fragments of the stories, I can hear what's unsaid. So much of what we've inherited from our ancestors are memories that they're choosing to impart on us. And the way memory transfer works is that it's imperfect, and it's deeply colored by the experience of that person. And I think this is especially true with Middle Eastern Jews in Israel, especially, who weren't treated well when they came to Israel, and whose experience, the memories that they wanted to pass on, weren't the memories of how they were treated. So we know from history and from scholars and from some accounts of how Middle Eastern Jews were treated when they came to Israel. But for the most part, it's not because our ancestors told us. Mostly they didn't want to share those parts of the memories. And so when I say from the fragments of the stories I can hear what's unsaid, I'm saying I am finding it in me to be able to see that there's a big picture and a more complex story than what I'm being told. And there's something sad about that, but there's also something really empowering about that we, in our own strength and imaginative power, can fill in the details in ways that are nourishing to us and that feel healing to us. And so what that means is that we can take it and we can sing our own songs and we can carve our own path. And I wish that for all of us as well.
Thank you, Yoni. So we're going to open it up for questions now. There's a microphone coming around, so raise your hand. Let's start over here. Wait for the microphone.
So I have noticed on several occasions that Hillel has taught our congregation a Sephardic or Mizrahi melody, and as we sing it back, it immediately gets flattened into a Western scale. So it's a twofold question. One is, what do you think about that? And the second part is, how do you get those of us who've been hearing the Western scales in our heads since, we're little, to sing those microtones?
Thank you for this question, which keeps me up at night. It literally does keep me up at night. I don't actually know what to do with it, because what draws me to this music is the complexity and the beautiful nuances of those notes, those microtones. They carry in them so much character and so much human expression in them. So I think they're really important, and I think they're really beautiful. And there's something really hard about for someone who has grown up hearing only Western music and Western harmony. It's almost impossible without a lot of practice to reproduce some of those notes. So as someone who's doing the work of trying to adapt Mizrahi and Arab music for American Jewish audiences in ways that I hope will be participatory and empowering and communal, I often ask myself this exact question, and I don't have a great answer. My first instinct is that it's better for the melodies to exist wrong than to not exist at all. That's my first answer. That feels obvious to me. And I think there's an important role for culture bearers, which I'm one of many in the United States. I'm very, very, very blessed to be in a community of many amazing musical cultural bearers who are immersing themselves very deeply in this tradition. And I think there's an important role for cultural bearers to keep us humble and keep us aware of what we do and don't know about this tradition. And I think that it's a good thing to adapt and to bring in music into our American Jewish spaces, that even if it means it's going to be flattened. And yeah, I also cringe a little bit when that happens. And I also feel a sense of relief and relief that the music is enduring. I hope that answers it. It doesn't answer it for me, but that's where I am right now.
So I'm an Ashkenazi guy with a Middle Eastern band, and it took me a long time to learn Makam, and I don't know all of them, but I think I can do Bayati pretty well. And the trick that I use, Yoni, is learn the Makam in the context of the song and stand next to my oud player who knows how to do microtonal scales on the oud because it doesn't have frets.
Totally, yeah. And for those of us who aren't lucky enough to have a band and an oud player next to us, I think listening actually is a really powerful tool. And I that's what I would recommend. If you're like, wait, I don't know if I'm singing this, or I don't know, don't worry about it if you're singing it or not. Just listen to a lot of music, and it will enter into you after a long time. Yeah, I agree.
I think it's a similar question, but for language pronunciation, I'm trying to pick up my father's pronunciation of Hebrew, and I just can't. I don't know how to do an ayin. I can't do a chet. So just for those of us who are not language experts or musicians, like if you have any thoughts about how to go about that personal project.
Well, there's two ways I can answer this. One is that we can do together. How do you make an ayin and a het together? That's one way we could do it. So maybe we'll do that. But first I'll say what was most helpful to me was studying Arabic. And I would say that's what I would recommend to everyone, is just to take an Arabic class, see what the letter looks like, hear a lot of people saying it. And I just think the first step is to just be around it a lot. But the het, one of the best ways that I was taught to make a het is to imagine, this is like if you've ever done yoga and you know an ujjayi breath, right? It's like you're fogging up a mirror. Het. That's how you make a het. Fogging up the mirror. Het, which is different than chaf, which has much more spit in it. Chaf versus het is mostly air. Het and chaf. They have two different sounds. And the ayn, I had one teacher, an Arabic diction teacher, at the Arabic music retreat in, I started going to this, I've been twice now, to the Arabic music retreat in Mount Holyoke College in Massachusetts with Simon Shaheen, master Palestinian oud teacher and pedagogue. And he has this teacher, Dr. Imam Rushdie Hamadi, and I took her Arabic diction class just for fun, even though I wasn't there as a vocalist, but she let me come in. And she would always say like, the ayin is like a very fat person. That's like, you need to make a lot of room for them. So when you do an ayin, you need a ayin. You need to make a lot of room in the back of your mouth. You also have to make a lot of space, time-wise, for the ayin. You have to, you even slow down. What instrument do you play? I play the oud. The oud. You actually have to like make space. Coming through, oud, right? Oud. That's how she describes me, and I actually found it to be very effective. The oud, and it's actually changed the way I relate to that syllable. I think I already kind of figured out how to do it before then, but then when she said that, it was like, that's great.
Thank you so much. Two things. So first of all, I want to circle back to the question about learning microtones. There are people who sing POT and do this stuff right here in LA. My friend Tori Green and I have almost once a month, once every 2 months, piyut and song circle that we do, where we're specifically focusing on elevating global Jewish music and piyutim from Mizrach, from like Jews of Eastern places. And of course, we throw in a Ashkenazi nigun every now and then because it's gorgeous. Why not? So there are local resources here for those who are like, oh no, and it's a smaller space, and I think it speaks to the fact that this is a communal, like, down in the ground experience. And Baruch Hashem, we have Yoni Battat. Persian, can't do it, trying. Baruch Hashem, we have you here, but like, we also have resources here in the community. So come talk to me later. But the other thing I wanted to comment on is the gendered aspect of like voice and transmission. I remember, being out of college, and it was the 2000s, and I was like desperate for someone to teach me Mizrahi ways to read Torah. I was going to say lane, to lane with a longsman.
Classic.
But I couldn't, it was so hard to find anyone. And I was back in New York area, and I found someone who was like Syrian Jewish from Brooklyn, but then he didn't have time. And like, these communities have had a certain way of doing things. So hearing about your grandmother is like very powerful and feels empowering. But also I wonder if you could comment on, I know you're involved with this Kedma music ensemble. There are women's voices there. I mean, I was brought to tears to hear women's voices, specifically in countries where the voice of a woman, and even in certain Jewish circles, is considered like kind of salacious or, kol isha, whether in Judaism or Islam or otherwise. So if you can speak to, I see you as someone who's empowering, but like, have you witnessed any of that, or what was your experience in the gendered aspects of this transmission, the fragments in the transmission?
Yeah, this music historically has had no space for women at all whatsoever. And I am including Arabic music before about 100 years ago. It wasn't common to hear women singing, even in Arabic music. Yeah, it's challenging. Because of that, I think there's so much, even just there's logistical work that needs to do. Like, what key do we sing this in so it's comfortable for women? How do we empower more women? Yes, there's all those logistical questions, but I also think there's something spiritual about it. Is that like this is so new to be hearing women's voices doing it, and like spiritually, the fact that that hasn't existed in the world for so long, I think makes it all the more harder. So yeah, we have our project Kedma, the Rising Song Piyut project, which features female voices, and there are other people doing this. My dear teacher Roni Ishran, from whom I learned to chant Torah, and I learned many piyutim. I learned a lot about Makam from him. He's one of the few people in Jerusalem, in Israel, teaching these skills specifically to women, and I give him so much credit for that. I think that what he's transformed the lives, and he single-handedly actually has like created a generation of, I mean, I don't mean a full generation, but a generation that includes many people who can become culture bearers with a female voice. And I'm still also being challenged constantly and pushed to find new ways to be accessible to all voices, and finding out what key to put something in, or how to lead something that invites people in, all people in. Is so important to me. So yeah, all that's to say, it's a really difficult journey, and but it is happening. It's never enough, and it is happening, and inshallah, it will make a difference in a few generations. Yeah.
Thank you for these great questions. Thank you to Yoni for telling your story and for all that you're doing.
Such a pleasure.
And,
thank you.
I would like to see all of you at the concert tomorrow night. It's going to be amazing. Yoni has a whole band with him. And if you want to hear this podcast episode, subscribe to Heritage Words on your favorite podcast platform, and follow the Jewish Language Project on social media for other things like this and fun facts. And I hope that we'll see you all online.